Bill C-11, we should be scared. Are there enough safeguards in place to protect privacy? These are recommendations that I don't want from Netflix and Amazon. There should be an option to turn it on or off. There is a privacy issue here. Here's the clip.
Anonymized information. How shall we go about this? I do point out that the bill does say that information about audiences should not gather personal information. So our aim is to look at the technology, come up with a plan, and give our recommendations about how to reach Parliament's aims with the least implications for privacy. Senator Simons. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
In the case, Senator Deschênes has anticipated what I wanted to say in large part. It seems to me, for myself, I'm a writer, a playwright, a journalist. I like to think of culture as something we consume on its own merits. But I think we have to recognize that for some of these large platforms, and I'm thinking specifically of Google and Prime, the programming is almost like a loss leader for the collection of the data. I mean, these are companies that exist to mine data to better sell us things. And they provide us the programming as a way of attaining that data. So I guess my first question is, do you think there are enough safeguards in Bill C-11 to protect us from the impacts of the extraordinary amount of data that these platforms are able to collect on us based on our viewing habits and our other likes and dislikes, and then they can build a profile based on all your clickages and your time spent on platforms to better market us?
In the bill, there are some references to the protection of privacy. There is this notion of not identifying Canadian users, and further sections about the CRTC's sharing of information with Competition Bureau. There is a provision that it must be done while respecting the privacy of Canadians. But we are suggesting that, given that these decisions will depend on how the Act is implemented, how it is interpreted, we have proposed the inclusion of a clause to bring into the broadcasting policy the protection of the privacy of persons. This is something that exists in the Telecommunication Act, and in our view, this is something that would assist if there are debates as to whether privacy is a fundamental consideration in this Act. In our view, it should be.
Do you have draft language that you can share with us, or is it more of a suggestion?
We've pointed to the language in the Telecommunication Act, which I think would include in Section 3 of this Act, in the broadcasting policy, the protection of the privacy of persons. There could be other ways of doing it, but we pointed to this one because there is already precedent for that in the Telecommunication Act.
And then I wanted to come back to Senator Deschênes' point. I mean, you spoke about the EU's plan to have an opt-out clause so that people don't have to accept recommendations. I mean, I personally find that idea very appealing. I am often very perplexed to know why Netflix thinks I want to watch this, or why Prime thinks I want to watch that. But it seems to me that this is running at cross purposes to Bill C-11, because if we're going to have a discoverability protocol that privileges Canadian content, but I wish to turn off the recommendations, that will stymie any effort to collect the data. I mean, obviously, C-11 does not include the capacity to turn off recommendations. Would that be the appropriate place to put such a clause? And if we did, would it undercut the whole concept of discoverability?
Well, and this is the assessment that you and that Parliament will have to make in terms of the specific objective of this legislation is different circumstances from the circumstances in the European Union. And so we bring that example as an example of one privacy-enhancing tool that exists. It may not be appropriate in this instance, as you suggest. It may be at cross purposes with the purpose of this Act, which is why we highlight other privacy-enhancing measures, making sure that the information is de-identified, making sure that the collection of information is as limited as possible to attain the objectives of Parliament, if that is Parliament's decision in the end.